And welcome back to Masters of Modern. I'm your host, Alex Kessler, here with my co-host, Ben Bateman. The one, the only,
what's up, everybody?
The legend.
Here we are. It's the two of us doing a review again. It's been a little while. We're talking about some fun stuff. I feel like, Alex, I don't even recognize sometimes the show that we do anymore. I haven't seen you in person in over 6 months.
I'm not real. I'm a construct.
I have memories of the podcast we used to record together, in the first year or two, in the one room of the other part of the office before the company existed and I didn't work for the company. It's really weird comparing those memories of starting the show to today. It's hard to even consider them the same thing, but it's the same podcast. We've been here for going on 6 years.
I mean, do you remember when we used to like the first time we ever had a guest, a call-in guest, and we took headphones that we taped to the head of a blue microphone, Yeti mic, on a table and taped it onto there so that the headphone jack went into the microphone. Yeah. So we've come a long way from early days, or the early days of the Masters of Modern podcast. And Zendikar has come a long way, right? It started as this blooming Adventurelands with maybe Eldrazi under the ground. Then there were Eldrazi under the ground. Then they came on top of the ground, kind of wrecked everything, and now they're gone. And Nahiri is trying to resurrect the ancient core empire. And Ness is like, "Yo, elementals are dope. Stop it." And Jace is like,
have you played against the new Nahiri yet?
I have not played against new Nahiri. I don't think she's seeing much play. I think Omnath currently is the talk of the town, the main one everyone's.
I played against
about.
Nahiri earlier today, actually, for the first time. It was what's the +10/+10 enchantment or a piece of equipment that
big sword,
blues
big
flying
hammer.
+10/+10.
Yep. One, it's 1 to play it, but it's a bunch to equip it. It's 8 to equip.
Yeah, there's some cool ways to take advantage of it. Obviously, Nahiri being one of them, because she makes a 1/1 that equips to an equipment. So you're able to make a gigantic 1/1.
Right.
It was a really close match, and they got me to 1, and then I managed to climb out of it and win. I have to tell you, the Gideon of the Trials Pact of Negation Super Friends Jeskai deck I've been playing in Historic is one of the more fun decks I've ever built. And I actually think there's a lot of people who watch this show would probably really enjoy watching. I'm getting to play 2 Teferi Master of Time, 4 Getting to the Trials. I'm playing the Royal Scions in the deck. I've got 3 Narset Parter Avails. It's just sweet. It's really fun.
I mean, I've been a big fan of that interaction forever. I'm glad. And in Modern, it wasn't even not unplayable, right? It never really made it, but it was close. The fact that it's playable in Historic isn't that surprising. I wish there was Titan Pact.
Yeah, well, the whole thing that's really interesting about it is there are synergies there that are really powerful. The fact that Gideon is both your engine that keeps you from dying off a pact, but also taking extra turns with Planeswalkers is great. And you have 2 different cards that allow you for 3 mana to take an extra turn. And as long as you have this Gideon emblem in play, not lose. And extra turns with Planeswalkers are great.
Sure.
There are some sequences, and then Gideon also, because of the fact that once you have the emblem, is your threat as well. It's pretty low to the ground. If you can come out correctly and you can draw Gideon and play him on turn 3 with a pact up, unless your opponent has just the right answer, there's a lot of situations where you just get out from under and there's just not much they can do. I've been pretty impressed. And also, I'll tell you, ulting a Royal Scions is real sweet. It's really fun because it's not that hard to do because it starts at such high loyalty anyway.
Sure.
Anyway, this is all my long-winded way of saying that I played against Nahiri and won the game.
Nice.
It was epic.
Nice. I'm excited that card's seeing play. I love Nahiri. She's one of my favorite characters. So it's cool that she's getting because when I saw the card originally, I was a little down on it because it's warrior and equipment tribal and just making tokens. And I'm just it's fine. I love the one Nahiri partially because it's good in control decks, and the equipment part is not necessarily part of each feature, just because in general equipment are bad, right? You have to have a real specific card named Stoneforge Mystic to make them something that's really good, and most of that equipment hasn't been printed within the last 10 years.
I think Nahiri, I love 4-mana Nahiri original. It's one of my favorites. I think I'm on the same page as you about that card. I think this new Nahiri, anytime they make one that's tribal like this, it's either you have to read the card and accept this won't be powerful because it costs 4 and what it's doing is too interactive with other card types that are very easy to get rid of, namely creatures. Or they could have made it cost 3, where you could have minus 3'd it to dig for an enchantment or a warrior, which would have been totally fine, right? Like you could have just made it cost 3, have less loyalty, and you just immediately it dies and you get to search for something, because that's totally fine. And then it has less loyalty and it's much easier to get rid of. But the fact that it costs 4 and has higher loyalty makes, I think, the card just a little bit more middle of the road.
Sure. I think that's fair. So welcome to the podcast. So for today, what we're going to be talking about, we're going to go over a few cards, just kind of going through the set and finding some things that we do and don't like. We're going to talk about Kicker and Party and get our read on of those mechanics, how we feel about them. Or as we go through the cards, we'll also talk about different individual ones that we like. And kind of just discuss the set in general. Now, speaking of mechanics, Ben, would you like to talk about Party or Kicker first?
Well, I mean, I think they're both interesting. Kicker we've talked about a little bit, and I think Kicker can be kind of reduced down. We mentioned this before, right? Kicker is every mechanic ever. That's what Kicker is. And there have been iterations of Kicker, like multi-Kicker, but mostly Kicker is just a name for like this card has an additional thing you can do, or you can do something. Like everything is Kicker. And so it's kind of strange almost to me that they decided to go back to Kicker. I guess, okay, isn't there a Dominaria card that whenever you play a spell with Kicker, something happens? Isn't that in Dominaria?
There's a few, and there's a few in this set, right? Like something that's interesting is within the like the framework of Arena having these sets on it, and then it, like the same way with cycling, right? Like by bringing Amonkhet, all these cycling cards from the last set became much more cooler. And it's almost like this is the same thing, right? Between Dominaria and this, we now have 2 sets of Kicker tribal cards being printed that all kind of get along with each other, which is really cool. Which, like, I wonder if Wizards is doing that on purpose, like revisiting some of the mechanics that, like, are really popular and played really well with the library of old Magic cards, but because Arena is such a focus now, don't have that library of cards to be cool with. So by releasing more cards, now Arena has that library of like, oh, there's like 2 giant sets of Kicker cards. There's 2 blocks of cycle cards. So I think that's intentional.
I love Arena, by the way. I've been pretty pro Arena at this point on this show, but I'm so happy I can play it on my computer now, and I don't have to like boot up or something, a bunch of stupid crap to be able to do it. It like just makes me very happy, because even the economy, which I think is wonderful. I love jamming games of Historic. I like drafts, and I can get cards. I like, you win packs, you win gold, you're able to play in events. You're able to cash that out for the stuff you need. Like, it does take a little tiny investment to get started, but even if you don't want to when you start, just take the free stuff they give you, go find the website that has all of the old pack codes. You can get like 21 free packs if you just use all the old pack codes. They don't expire. At least I've noticed. Like, they're all just, if you type in any of the old, like, redeem 3 packs, the last like 7 of them work. You can get like 21 packs if you sign up for Arena right now, literally. And like, that's enough to start your collection off. So it just makes me happy that it's like functional and easy. And also, thank God, during this pandemic, there's like a visually pleasing, like enjoyable version of Magic I can play consistently. That's not like a giant complicated operation. Even what we do on our Monday streams, which have been so fun, it's like a little like janky. Like, we have to angle my camera down, and it's like, it's a little more complicated than just like, let me just turn on this app and push play.
Right.
That's easy.
Well, one of the things I think is really interesting is so Screen Junkies did a because they do the honest trailer videos, and they did one this week that was a honest trailer on all of the streaming services, and they touched upon each one. And when they did the Disney Plus one, something they like kind of said was like, Disney Plus, this thing that they launched that was going to be this cute thing that then, because of COVID, ended up being the entire strategy for the company this year, because every Disney park and cruise and movie and TV show all shut down. So this is all they had. And like, Arena's not far off from that kind of concept, I guess, is the point I'm making, where like you have the fact that paper Magic kind of went away, like GPs went away, like it still is out there and people are opening packs, but it's significantly reduced than what they were expecting. And so now Magic has become Arena and Commander paper streams on Spell Table.
I think 2021, I think, quite honestly, I am fairly confident by mid 2021 we'll be like returning to live events, like concerts, sporting events, like GPs. I think they'll be back by next summer. So I think like this is just the ultimate thing to happen to push anything digital forward. Like I think just the same way Disney Plus is having a lot of success, Arena is. And I think, thank God, because I really want Magic to succeed. And I think the success of Arena is a really big thing for that. I think it's going to mean a lot for Magic's longevity, that like they got this, organic push that came from somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. And obviously there are issues. A lot of people bring up like a big drama of the moment is how, there's a feeling that like Hasbro is pushing Wizards to sell packs or do better or, to grow their business. And people, there's a conspiracy theory basically that like the reason stuff has been so powerful over the last year and a half is because it's like driving people in all formats of Magic to pick up more and more Magic sets. And that's now splintered off into different theories. There's a theory that like Wizards designing for Commander, ends up creating cards that are too powerful for Standard because they're like meant to be balanced in a 4-player game of Commander. But then those cards like Winota or Omnath are examples of this, right? But then those cards end up making it so Standard is bad. So then Standard players are moving to Commander, and then now Commander is being inundated by these competitive players. Like there's this whole like library of like steamrolling theories that everyone's throwing around. I think that one was Shivam, and all kind of based on just like Wizards need to push the sets more and kind of have that like by pushing this power level, this is intentional to sell more packs, because the higher the power level in Standard, the more packs they can sell. I don't think that's true. I honestly don't. Based on the conversations I've had with friends of ours that work at Wizards, I do think that they in general are motivated to make the best game possible. I think a lot of the influence you see that made this power level is the reaction to Ixalan. And we've talked about this before, right? The reaction to Ixalan got people to think that, powered down Magic in Standard ends up being not fun. So if you make a bunch of different powerful things, Standard ends up being more fun. And they tried new ways that stuff can be powerful, and they're finding things that it shouldn't be, right? Like it's pretty blatant that like Life Gain and Ramp shouldn't exist together. Just like Omnath, or not Omnath. Yeah, Omnath is one of them, but Omnath is a bad idea, as was Oko, as was Uro. Another one is like spells that are 4-drops that are free the turn you play them are a bad idea. We had multiple ones earlier this year, and now Omnath is here. And Omnath is a cantripping 4-drop that makes 4 mana the turn after you play it. So, lessons learned, hopefully. Stop making 4-drops that draw you a card and replace themselves with mana.
Do you think Omnath's a problem? I mean, Omnath only... you have to untap with Omnath. And it's not like you have to untap at the end of your turn.
You can play it on turn 5.
Oh, sure. So you draw a card, then you play it, you gain 4 life, crack that, get your 4 mana, that whole thing.
Like if you play Omnath and fetch, you have now gotten a free Omnath in play, drawn a card, and gained 4 life, right? I'm correct there?
Yeah, because if it's the first time, if it's the second time,
first
it's the third time.
Second time is game mana. Yeah. So yeah, if you play Omnath and fetch, you draw a card, gain 3 life because you fetched, and then have 5 mana of any color combo you really could want, because you could fetch for the black mana you'll need. And then if you're able to play any card that gives you more land, which generally these decks are doing, you can do that. You can then do 4 damage to your opponent. And like, remember, the play pattern really is turn 3 play Uro, turn 4 play Omnath with the extra land you played from Uro. To then play Uro off of Omnath to play the next land, dome them for 4, gaining 3 life. And then that doesn't mention the scoop mob that's in play. And now you broke Arena with how many scoop mobs you have. I think Omnath is likely to be banned alongside Uro at some point. Maybe soon.
I have to tell you, so when we played, and we're going to talk all about, we're going to talk about Party and Kicker, but so we've been doing these Monday streams. Every Monday we bring on 2 other players and we do a Commander stream. You've actually gotten me to be playing Commander weekly on a week-to-week basis now. And, this last week I built Joyer of the Gitu, my own list, which is pretty fun, actually. I think it was a pretty good deck. Like, not great, but pretty good for just like a from scratch. And what I was going to say, though, was I had a great time playing, and that Ben Wheeler built an Uro tempo deck, which was so dope. I was like, this is like why really smart Magic players who are good and like to play with fun cards and aren't just cranky like me are so awesome, because he's like, I have found a way to make this really stupid Magic card that like he was literally playing in his deck, like something that made me so happy. I was like, wow, this isn't unfair at all. This is just great. Why didn't I think of using this as a tempo commander? How cool that all of your Miracle Grow creatures and Berserks and like, this is great. I just was like, man, that is really cool. I was impressed with how good that card was as a commander and how much fun it was to watch it go off.
Yeah, I think this is the space in Commander that you haven't gotten a chance to really experience, because you've only really built the 3 decks you've built, and this is the first time you've built something new. And this is the part of Commander that I enjoy the most, and I guess today is just a bunch of grab bag subject matters. Is that is the hipster version of Commander building. And like, in fact, it's really hard for me to build a Commander deck unless I've come up with a cool, different way of doing something. One of the reasons I built Nahiri, and before that it was a Boros Reckoner themed Tajic deck, was my red-white deck, is because I'd never seen anything like that before, right? There was nothing really close to that, and doing something different with it was interesting. And doing a red-white Reanimator deck I had never seen before. That's why I kind of built the deck, because I wanted to see like, oh, these pieces seem to be here. Plus there's a bunch of good Eldrazi themed stuff here that you can do, and sneak attacks. And it worked. Kess Crimes, which is a deck that's all about like using Kess to rebuy threaten effects, and then using those threaten effects with sack outlets or blink effects to permanently steal your creatures or kill them, was like something I hadn't really seen out of, there are with a Kess deck at least. So it's always something to like look at as like, oh, how I can't build when we started this Commander project, you were kind of like, it sucks that I can't play tempo. Like the thing I want to do, you can't do. And the fact that we had Wheeler on, and Wheeler played a blue-green tempo deck that like you played dirtily 2-drops and 3-drops that just like got really big as single creatures over time, because it like triggers off of drawing cards or playing spells, and then just starts attacking people with these individual cards. And in the meantime, he's just drawing a bunch of cards and playing a bunch of counter magic to prevent you from stopping his berserked 2020 lore scale Codal from punching you in the face.
I mean, that was kind of like my whole thing when I've been playing like Runeshinner's Pike with Inkmoth Nexus in my decks. Mm-hmm. I've been like adding those 2 cards to any spell-based commander deck I build, because I had that same idea of like, I want to win out of nowhere. I want to be able to like win, and I just saw what he was doing. I thought it was really cool. So, but anyway, we digress, because Commander is not what this episode's about. But long story short, Uro, I was like, that's a cool use of that card, because I otherwise hate that card. And I do want it to get banned because I like really dislike the kind of Magic that Uro and Omnath promote. It's my least favorite kind of Magic. It makes the games feel gummy and sludgy in this way that's like, I'm trying to think how to put it into words. It's kind of like when somebody plays the 6-mana Chandra against me that can't be countered, and it gives you emblems, pluses to give you emblems, and it can like kill any creature or planeswalker you have. There's this feeling of like, we got to a point in the game where you had enough lands that you could cast this big clunky 6-drop, but the fact that it can't be countered means that like, basically if we got to this point in the game, you're probably playing blunt force trauma cards that I'm just going to lose to now. There's not that much I'm going to be able to do. I guess maybe if I happen to have the right removal spell for it, something that kills a planeswalker, or I was far enough ahead maybe, but otherwise, if I'm playing traditional pieces of control, counter magic, maybe burn spells, creature bounce, you have something down that I probably can't interact with, and you will probably win the game because of it, unless I can race it. And that's kind of how I feel about those other cards.
Yeah, I think someone brought up a good point today, and it was basically like their least favorite type of deck to play against is Ramp, and I kind of think I agree. I think that Ramp should never have an easy time gaining life. I think that whenever like or in reality, Ramp shouldn't be able to ramp easily. In a way that also lets them stabilize against aggro. Because I think aggressive decks should always be a counter to what Ramp is doing. And when Ramp is able to just beat aggressive decks, like the fact that Uro gains you 3 life, really gains you 6 life, and then puts a 6/6 blocker into play is like so hard for an aggro deck to beat. And so there's no real easy way to beat them on that axis. And Ramp beats every other axis, right? Like Ramp beats control, Ramp beats mid-range decks, Ramp like without blinking, Ramp beats like combo sometimes can beat Ramp, but like even then debatable, because Ramp normally can play the cards that stops combo without really working too hard, because it can play any color. So I think in my thought that like those are the ways it makes sense. You need to be able to punish those types of decks. I'm fine with people playing 6-mana Chandra in the perspective of like a control deck, right? Like if I'm able to control the game to the extent that I've been able to survive till turn 6, then I deserve to get to play a dope card on turn 6. I'm fine with that.
Well, so my point was not to say that I think Chandra's a stupid card. I think like there's a place for all Magic cards for all players. My point was to say I think that those types of cards, when games come down to, I've packed my deck full of cards that are now designed. Because think about like, can't be countered wasn't a clause that used to exist on cards. A long time ago, that wasn't a thing that even was. They created that at some point, right? And the same idea with a card like Uro. Compare like Uro, you go all the way back to the beginning. You compare it to like Force of Nature or like Shivan Dragon. It's like, come on, you're talking apples and oranges. And then you go further into Magic's history and you look at good creatures. Like you think about maybe the black, green, white one from Apocalypse that I can't think, Spirit Monger, or you think about like Obstinate Baloth or something maybe from the mid era of Magic. And it starts to feel like, okay, like they were trying to put more abilities, make creatures more resilient, give you a little bit more power. When I look at Uro, I'm like, this is just doing everything. It's just doing everything.
Yeah.
It makes the concept of playing something other than this stupid. Like the cards that are like a 2-mana counter your spell, like a mana leak type of card, feels so dumb against a card like Uro. Like it just, you have to be, everything has to line up exactly, right? Your lightning bolts, your whatever, they all have to line up sort of exactly right in the right order. Otherwise, this overwhelming thing that they've created is going to win. It's just the inevitability of cards like that is what I don't like. So I was excited to see it played in a commander deck because I thought it made the card feel a lot more human, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that the trend we've seen of more and more cards like that being printed in that design space, I definitely think it should be checked because inevitability, the same we saw with Oko, isn't fun. It's just not fun when somebody for relatively cheap gets so much advantage, and not advantage like cheap, I'm going to combo you out. It's advantage that's like, I'm going to play this and you just won't ever really be able to get ahead of me because I just got this for so cheap. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't disagree. All right, let's jump in. So Kicker is back. Kicker, I think earlier on, I forget, it might have been during a commander stream, I was complaining about Kicker, and basically my statement around it is like, it's always feel bad to me, right? Like I guess it gets dope when you draw it. It's just always so hard for me to cast a Kicker spell.
Yep.
Like it's the opposite side. Like I always want the effect from Kicker and the creature is a bonus. I think we were talking that like I like Evoke more than I like Kicker in the sense that like Evoke, I get the spell half, and then sometimes I might get a dirtily creature that's fine. Like getting a 2/2 flyer is cool, getting a 3/2 fear is cool, but like I want the just the Doomblade, or I want the Terror, I guess is what it is, or I want the draw 2 cards, for 3 mana plus maybe a creature dying, versus Kicker, which is like, oh, I'll get this terrible 3/2 for 3. Oh, but if I spend 6 mana and wait, I can bounce a creature also. So I'm just not going to play this for 3 turns, and then I get punished because I'm a greedy person. And I get why people like Kicker. Yeah, sorry, go.
I agree with you totally. So it's interesting, right? Like you go back to old Magic. You talk about when Kicker first was introduced. If I recall correctly, it's definitely Invasion block. It might have been in Plane Shift or Apocalypse. Might have just been Invasion. I can't remember, but it's definitely that.
It was a major block mechanic.
Yeah. So it was probably an Invasion. So, but I remember some of those old cards. Do you remember the Volver cycle? They like Dagvolver, Rackavolver. They're like the 1/1s for 2 that have a Kicker ability in each of the enemy colors, so that you can like build like your 3/3 lifelink first striker for like 6 mana or 5 mana or whatever. You don't remember these? They were all rares. There's like 5 of them probably.
I have played with an Invader card maybe 0 times.
I'm sure in our chaos drafts you've probably opened one of these. But point being,
yeah,
these were.
Is that where the original green black like 0/0 gets a bunch of counters, has regenerate creatures from?
That's Phyrexian Scudda. That's from I think Plane Shift.
Okay, I don't know.
But long story short, my point in saying this is that those are all, without the Kicker abilities, they're all terrible. They're all like 2 mana 1/1s. Like they're useless cards. And the original design, because they were like, this is a really cool idea that we have for Kicker, is totally fine. The creatures you're getting by, building your thing aren't that good. Like paying 5 for like a 3/3 lifelinker with first strike is not that good. But the point is, they were like, this is really cool. You can sort of build your own creature. However, you would never really want to play the 1/1 for 2. And I think about how that's evolved over the years, and every time they've brought kicker back, and the times they've tried experimenting with something like multi-kicker, and it's like, I can't think of a card, at least almost any card offhand, that in Magic's history, that I would really want to play the front half of the kicker card. I'm trying to think if there's like one from like Modern Horizons, like Dismantling Blow, right? Is there like a destroy and you draw 2 cards or something if you kick it? Is that, am I remember that correctly? There's like a white card.
1 green mana, target creature gains hexproof versus 1 green, target creature gets hexproof +4/+4. Like, obviously I want to do the double
Okay,
green.
Vines.
Yeah, Vines of Vastwood, but like if I'm paying the 1/2, I'm not like, I'm normally doing it to counter a spell, right? So I think that's one that I'm
that's a good example. Yeah. So that's maybe the best one. Like because you're right. I would pay 1 green. That's the whole design of kicker. And I agree with you. You mentioned the blue 3/2 that bounces a creature, or 2/3 maybe. And then from this set. And another one is the 1 blue 2/1 that for 4 mana can return a spell to your hand. But otherwise it's a 2/1 for 2. And like,
and that
I really
really
want
good.
that spell back. I drew that card over and over again playing in my 7 rounds of Sealed, and I almost never cast it as a 2/1. I like one time out of the like 7 times I drew it, I cast it as a 2/1, and I had to block. But otherwise, I was like, I'm never going to play this for 2 because like.
And there's some cool kicker cards here that I do want to talk about because I think they're going to be interesting. But yeah, I always it's much harder for me. I think. Honestly, I like multi-kicker more than regular kicker because at least then there's the coolness of scale. I understand that it's probably a pretty small quantity of different things can do that, but like I love Wolfbriar Elemental, right? That card's really dope. The fact that it is and that's a fine 4 mana for a 4/4 is fine, and then 5 mana for a 6 power, and then 6 mana for 8. But that's another card that like I'm always like, yeah, I don't know. I think we kind of agree on kicker. Now the other mechanic is party, and party is really interesting. Party's really interesting because party is really 4 mechanics that are grouped together. So it's kind of in the same way like historic from Dominaria, which is interesting that was also paired with kicker. In the sense that like there's rogue tribal in this set, there's cleric tribal in this set, there's wizard tribal in this set, and then there's warrior tribal in this set. And there's at least I think 2 rare, like there's multiple tribal cards for each of those mechanics and draftable strategies around them. And also there's party. And like, for instance, I know you're pretty hyped the fact that there's a bunch of cool new good rogue cards. We talked about Nahiri and warriors and that kind of thing earlier. There's a lot of big fans of clerics. I think either Michael or Marshall is working on a cleric deck for the stream. So speaking of which, I don't know if we mentioned this in the raw feed. I'll get to it in a second. But yeah, so I think that like there's a lot of cool. Like, it's cool that there's just really 4 tribes here. There's the tribal mechanic on Zendikar, which has always been true, right? Original Zendikar had core and vampire and elf tribal, with even, I think, some merfolk tribal and goblin tribal. And this has these. And then on top of that, you have cards that just, like, get this cool benefit from party. What are your thoughts overall on the mechanic?
On party?
Yeah.
I think party's pretty cool. Nothing I've seen so far with party has made me feel like it's pushed very hard. There's a couple cards that are really cool, but there's no like, I don't see the mechanic and go like, man, there's so much abusable interaction here. It seems like a pretty fun limited mechanic that I think I like that it makes relevant these on the whole, other than Wizard. Wizard is a pretty strong creature type over the years, but Warrior, Rogue, and Cleric are all like fan favorites. I like the Dungeons and Dragons aspect of it, the sort of like flavor aspect of party. I think that's pretty cool. The idea of there being like how many members of your party. I think that's all really awesome. And yeah, I think ultimately the rogue aspect is the thing I'm the most excited about. I mean, and Wizards, to be honest, I like that Wizards are getting another push with party because I think Wizard Tribal is something that like you say to someone like I'm playing a game called Magic the Gathering. And
they assume
like, hey,
wizards
name
are
10 words. You go like name 10 words that you think would go along with this game. You have no idea. They'd probably be like magic. I don't know, wizard. Like that's probably the first word that comes to most people's minds, right?
Maybe dragon.
So the idea that elves or something, but like I think the point being the fact that it's taken this long for Wizard to really be like a prominent mechanic in Magic, not just like a creature type. There's tons of wizards over the years, but like they pushed it in Dominaria in a sweet way. Like I love Wizard's Lightning and Wizard's Retort. Those are great. I love Adeliz. I love a lot of the cards they've given us there. So it's cool that there's another mechanic being introduced that then rewards us for another one of Magic's, I think, flagship and iconic creature types.
Yeah, no, I
Plus, rogues are friggin' sweet.
Yeah. I think also like with party, there's kind of like three different versions of the mechanic, right? There's like the ones that this card is bad unless you're really pulling off a good party, right? They're like this card no longer does anything unless you're doing this, which feels really limited oriented generally. There's the cards that are like, this is a good card. Also, there's some text on here that if you have a party going on, upgrade this card in a way that's powerful. And like a good example is the Dauntless Escort. What's it called? Linvala.
Oh,
the
sure.
new Linvala, which is like
a
flying 3/3 Dauntless Escort is a card, right? That was like Dauntless Escort non-flying, which was white, green, and colorless for the sacrifice to be able to give all your creatures indestructible, was like played in standard, and like a real card. This is that card, but flies, which is always better. I'm going to say always better. And then plummet, get out of here. And then also has this marginal ability that if you have a full party, you get to do a thing. I think that's like, that's I think the most likely to see playing constructed. And then there's the like cost reducing ones that if you have some party get better and better. The one that comes, the two that come to mind are the two black ones, right? There's the, and I'm
the
forgetting
demonic tutor one.
Yeah, there's the one that's demonic tutor that gets cheaper for every person in your party, and then if you have a full party, is 1 mana tutor and then play a spell for free. And then there's the animate dead, right, or the reanimate, that like you can either reanimate one thing and a party member, and the more party members you have, it gets significant. You know, it could be 2 mana to do that, and I think those are like, you can like, for like having a rogue and a cleric in a black deck is not that hard, and now you're paying 4 mana reanimate, and that's better on rate than 9 times out of 10. Or like, I think the last 20 reanimate cards printed, if not the last 5 years of reanimate cards printed. So I think that's kind of what's really interesting to me, and ways you can break stuff with party, where things that are like, use party as delve almost to get effects at better rates than you normally get, is something that's interesting to me, especially because like, there might be enough self-mill clerics out there and rogues and wizards that you can do something like a reanimating version of that. It's cool. So
I feel like Linvala, I feel like Bant Collected Company party-based deck seems like something I would like to do. That seems like real fun.
That sounds really sweet. Yeah, and that's like, you know, not modern, but historic playable for sure. Linvala would be almost an auto include for me in those decks because it can do that kind of stuff.
That's what I mean. I think that's Linvala seems like one of the things I can think of that's like the best with what I'm talking about, because like if you like have Linvala in play and you like, you know, play your Collected Company pre-combat, you will likely be able to complete party. And now Linvala like invalidates their blocker, and you know, like it's a whole thing.
Yep. Or removal spell, you can collect a company in response and get her to save your other thing. That's more, you know, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with it. The one negative is the sacrifice to prevent to give everything indestructible on your flying 3/3 is your flying 3/3 is now more valuable than you maybe don't want to do that. It's like, oh, I can save this one random bad creature, or I can save this flying 3/3 that's going to kill my opponent, and maybe that's better. Well, that is better. It's like, you know, more heartstrings and difficult decisions. So before we start getting onto a card by card basis, we kind of already started for the remainder of the set. I do want to do a few shout outs. First on, make sure to follow us on Twitter. I'm at Kess Wiley.
You guys can find me at Ben Bateman Media, Twitter and Instagram.
Make sure to check out our Patreon. It is how we make this podcast. Also, there's a bunch of cool stuff. The coolest one is the raw feed. So every episode that we record, the stuff you're listening to right now, there's a ton of extra content we record in every episode. Specifically, there was, you know, even in this episode, 10 minutes at the beginning of the episode, just us ranking fast food restaurants and talking about how hag specific chicken nuggets may or may not be, and how much I dislike them, and you guys to find out which chicken nuggets I'm talking about. And so definitely check that out. There's swearing in that version. There's a bunch of cool stuff. So that is on the Patreon. And I think you get it once you hit the $5 tier or above. Everyone gets access to the raw feed. We incorporate them into kind of conversations about what we're going to do every week. Any cards that they want to make sure that we hit upon as we do reviews. And then a bunch of other cool stuff that they get access to. Plus, they help make this podcast happen. They're how we're able to do all the video editing and the episode editing so that this comes out on time, and we're able to do it every week. So thank you. Check it out, but also thank you to all your patrons that are listening right now. We appreciate all your help. Pinky's up to you. and as well. Also, we are doing Commander streams now. So every Monday we do a Commander stream, 7:30 p.m. PST on twitch.tv/Kess Wiley or the MMcast YouTube channel. Last week we had Gavin Verhey and Ben Wheeler on. It was an awesome game. Game 2 is currently on the YouTube channel. You can go check that out. Some of the most insane stacks I've ever seen. Ben mentioned the really cool Uro deck Wheeler was playing. And then next week, where it's going to be me, and this, so Monday will be me, Marshall, Michael, and Ben, all having just built brand new Commander decks based around Legends from this set. I am very, 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 very much working on a snow crab themed monstrosity, and I'm excited to have as many islands in play as possible. I don't know what anyone else is building, and we're really hyped about that. So we'll see you guys hopefully during the stream on Monday at 7:30 p.m. PST, as well as all the other things. And make sure to subscribe. Hit that like button. The like button matters, as do comments. If you can comment on a card that we didn't talk about today, maybe one of the land flip lands, maybe if you thought one of our opinions earlier in the episode was wrong, we'd love to hear your thoughts below. And then also hit the like button. It's right there. You have time right now.
Agreed.
You can hit it right now. Hit
Couldn't
the like
agree
button.
More. Couldn't agree more.
I think those are all our shout outs. Now we can talk about individual cards. The first card I'm going to talk about today, Arch Priest of Iona. 1, it gets its power is equal to the number of creatures in your party. X2, at the beginning of your combat on your turn, if you have a full party, target creature gets +1/+1 and gains flying until end of turn. Obviously, the important thing is that this can be like a 3/2 for 1 pretty easily, I think, like, because it is a cleric, so you just need any of the other two, and how hard is that to really pull off? And I think if I think that's kind of the other thing, is having 3 creatures in a party doesn't seem too impossible. It's when you want to get to the full 4 that becomes really difficult. But yeah, I think that's like a thing that it can do.
I think it's power equal number of creatures in your party. So like if you play a changeling, this thing doesn't get just automatic, right?
Correct.
You have to have one of each different kind.
One individual creature for each party.
So I think this card's pretty weak. I mean, it's a cool card and it costs 1, so it's interesting. But I think it's having the full party or even having 2 other creatures in your party, if your deck is hyper built to be that way. But like, unless you have a bunch of changelings, which aren't that good, the configuration to be able to get to 3 different types at all times, not have redundancy, I think makes it a little complicated. And I think this is going to end up being a 2/1 often. There are some situations where it's going to be a big flying 5, whatever. But I think often it's going to be a little underwhelming.
Legion Angel, 2 white angel warrior flying. When Legion Angel enters the battlefield, you may reveal a card Reveal a card you own named Legion Angel from outside the game and put it into your hand. It's a 4/3 flying 4/3. 4 mana flying 4/3. I think this is actually a really interesting space for white card draw, right? Like being able to like wish the same creature or different things from your wish board in white, I think is like a really interesting space to play in. I think this card's just fine, right? It's a flying 4/3, but I think the fact that it can do that is pretty sweet.
I think it's pretty good, actually. I think there are like certain scenarios in which this card is like, I think it's kind of legit. I mean, I guess cost reducers are necessary to make it really good, but if you have even a single cost reducer and a 3 mana 4/3 that draws you a 3 mana 4/3, I was saying if you have cost reducers at all, and even just a 3 mana 4/3 flyer that draws you a 3 mana 4/3 flyer, and that's not that hard to accomplish. Let alone if you have like perhaps like a double cost reducer, and you can get this down to being like a 2 mana 4/3 flyer because you've like built your deck that way. I just think the idea that you could like a 4/3 flying creature is pretty good.
Right,
we've seen a 3/4 flyer for 4 with flash and a different card advantage ability be like dominant before in formats, right? And Resto, that's like generates its own kind of value. And the fact that it has flash, but I mean a 4/3 flyer for 4 that flies is not weak.
Would you play a 4/3 flyer for 4 that draws you a card?
No.
But this guarantees you getting another
card. This draws
you a 4/3 flyer for 4.
I mean, consider for a second how good this card is in a top decking situation.
Right.
where you're like mana flooded and you guys are going like 1-1 and you're like, cool, let me play this 4-3 for 4. Guess what? I have 3 more of them where that one came from. So as long as I have mana, I'm going to get 16 power, and you are going to probably draw a land on your next draw.
And the opportunity cost, including
you know what I mean? Like that's pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, in your sideboard, right? You lose the slots, but
No. I'm saying the opportunity cost is low, right? Especially in like best of one, where like literally I'm not even using that sideboard slot. So I just like including 1/4/3 in my deck for 4, and I like is just like at some games it's just going to be the thing that wins. Yeah, I think I agree. I think it's pretty great. Next card, Luminarch Aspirant. 1 and a white human cleric. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It's a 1/1. Thoughts? Dreams?
Seems fine, right? What was it? Luminarch, you said?
Luminarch Aspirant. I think what's cool about it is in +1/+1 deck, tribal decks, it like does like on a pretty consistent way put the counters on. It does happen right before combat, so it does have that kind of like +1/+1 counter tribal. Other than that, I think it's relatively weak. It is a 2-drop, which does like give it a lot of flavor. When I had it in limited, it was insane. Like this is an insane card in limited, and just is pretty good. It's also a cleric, which obviously for party is relevant, and kind of a benefit there. I
think as they continue to develop the space more and make it so you get a bonus for having creatures with counters on them, this card becomes insane. I already can think of this card, considering Rogue is in party, and Una's Blackguard gives you such a great advantage for playing creatures with counters on them. Even if this is not even in a deck with rogues necessarily, just the idea that you could play this card, you could put a counter on it, and then Una comes down and they discard a card. It's just like a bear, or there's a lot of situations like that I think.
Yeah, like a +1/+1 counters Una's Blackguard plus party tribal deck is like probably a thing. I think that's like there's probably enough synergy there.
Yeah.
Skyclave Apparition. 1 white core spirit. When Skyclave Apparition enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 target non-land, non-token permanent you don't control with converted mana cost 4 or less. When it leaves the battlefield, the exile card's owner creates XX blue illusion creature token, where X is the converted mana cost of the exiled card. It is a 2/2. Speaking of collected company.
Yeah, totally.
Like this is just I mean, this is better than, it's not better because it's 4 or less, right? So it's not as good as like some of the like O-ring creatures that we've gone in the past, but I think this is a pretty strong card.
Yeah, it's also a spirit. I mean, it's also a spirit in spirit tribal, like with like spirit collected company decks. That makes it relevant.
That's true.
Considering
And has a good ability.
But yeah, this card's good. Also, like them getting an XX creature token in a lot of decks, like you don't care because like you'll bounce the token, versus like them getting the problematic card back is much worse for you.
Like they're like, imagine them playing Dark Confidant, and on turn 3 you play this in your Spirits deck, and now they lost their Dark Confidant, and if they kill your Spirit, they get a 2/2, and like who cares?
Yeah, exactly. I think there's something to it.
Tazri, Beacon of Unity, 4 and a white
non-land. By the way, it's target non-land, non-token permanent you don't control, right? Yeah. So it's not like Fiend Hunter in those cards. Like it's not quite Deputy of Attention, but it's like it is notable. This is not just a Fiend Hunter creature. It's like much better than that.
Yeah, it can get rid of Planeswalkers. It can get rid of artifacts, enchantments. Like it's very versatile. Yeah, I agree with that. It's closer to O-Ring than it is Fiend Hunter.
Yeah.
Tazri, Beacon of Unity, 4 white human warrior. It costs 1 less to cast for each creature in your party. 2 blue, 2 black, 2 red, 2 green. Look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal up to 2 cleric, rogue, warrior, wizard, and or ally cards from among them and put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. It's a 4/6. A few things. I had this in limited, and I was just playing straight up blue white, but like being able to cast this for 7 as the activated ability in limited was like bonkers, because you just like get to play 2 cards for free for 7 mana, not to mention if you're able to pull the color combo off.
Yeah.
Since this is the absolute only ally referencing card in all of this set, how do you feel with allies not returning?
I mean, I wasn't the biggest fan of allies. I'm glad they're not back. I think this card's really cool. I think this card's really fun. I don't think it's going to be game breaking by any means, but I think it's totally cool. And I like this card. I like the design of it. I think this card utilizes the party mechanic really well.
You don't think in the dedicated party deck, like,
say what?
You don't think in a dedicated party deck that's like 5 colors, if you're pulling that 5 color look off, the ability to like play this for 2 mana, 3 mana as a 3 mana 4/6, and then get the advantage of being able to then draw a bunch of cards late game off of that isn't powerful?
I think it's powerful. I think like, so just let's just say for instance, you were playing the party deck and you like got, you got out like 3 creatures in your party. So this thing costs you, it's a 2 mana 4/6. Well, presumably all the creatures you're playing are pretty good cards. So like, they're like, it's a little win more if you're getting it for cheap, right? You already probably have a pretty good board. If you don't have a good board, like they wrath you and you draw this card and it's just like a 5 mana 4/6, the activation is hard to get to and expensive. I think it's totally good. Like, I think this card is good. I think this card will get played. I just don't think it's nuts. I think it's like, it's cool. I think it's a cool card.
Next card is Charix the Raging Isle. 2 blue legendary creature Leviathan Crab. Spells your opponent's cast target. The target Charix cost 2 more to cast. 3 mana. Charix gets X plus X minus X until end of turn, where X is the number of islands you control. It is a 0/17.
Sorry, go ahead.
I love this card. I am brewing this as a commander for Monday's stream. Get hyped. This pile of cards right here is all of the cards that I have to sort through and figure out what actually goes in the deck. Now, a chunk of these are just snow-covered islands, so that at least takes out some of it, and there's some sweet different cool proxies that people have given me that I'm really excited about to also show off. So pretty hyped about that. You're going to get a lot of my thoughts on that after that episode. So I don't know how much I want to go in past that. Ben, what are some of your thoughts, since this will be, since I'm going to be punching you in the face with the, 13-0 crab on Monday?
I think it's like really sweet. I mean, I like the design of this card a lot. I think it's a Leviathan Crab, which I know you're like really hyped on just in general. Like you're very happy to be playing this card. I also think like anything that makes your opponent's targeting your creature more expensive is good. It's like those cards are always like a huge pain in the butt to interact with. One of the cards that I've always played against Eric with, and he always plays in his blue-white Wizards deck that just makes me like hate the world, is Grand Arbiter Augustine IV, or whatever that card's called.
Okay.
Makes your spells cheaper and all their spells cost more. And I hate that card because anytime your spells cost more, Thalia. So if I want to deal with your creature and it costs me 2 more, that's good. I think this card's cool. I mean, I think especially as a commander, I'm excited to see what you do with it in mono blue. I think that'll be great. Yep,
I'm super hyped. And there's like fun stuff too, right? Like I get to play Tetsuko, Umezawa Fugitive. Which makes him unblockable, which is sweet. And like just like cool stuff. Whelming Wave, return all creatures to their owner's hand except for Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents. Like there's going to be some fun Leviathan tribal, some fun Crab tribal, some fine Toughness tribal, some fun Island tribal, just all the things. Next card on our list is Confounding Conundrum. When Confounding Conundrum enters the battlefield, draw a card. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, if that player had another land enter the battlefield under their control this turn, they return that land to their hand. Or they return a land they control to their hand. Kind of just like a blue hate card against people playing too many lands in a turn. This is brutal against fetch lands. So like in Modern, this on turn 2 is like so limiting that you can always fetch on like your opponent's turn, so you just have to kind of like go back and forth in how you fetch. So it's not too bad. But you'll get someone once in a while. But then obviously against the Uros or the Primeval Titan decks, it's like very powerful.
It's also like another card that it cycles, which is nice. That comes down on turn 2 and draws you a card. I think that makes it good. B, there are a bunch of these cards. There's Tunnel Ignis, and there's like all of the things that make your opponent, all of the things that if an opponent had a second land enter, this happens, or like Ghost Quarter type of effects. Like there's a lot of synergies with stuff like that I think are pretty cool, that punish your opponents for playing fetch lands, but also B, just for lands entering the battlefield. So It's like something like your Field of Ruins and your Ghost Quarters make it like really interesting to play against. So because Field of Ruin only hits non-basic, right? But Ghost Quarter hits any land? Or does Ghost Quarter also only non-basic?
I think they both hit
any land.
They both hit any land, I think. Might be wrong.
No, Ghost Quarter or Field of Ruins definitely non-basic. I think Ghost Quarter might be any land.
Ghost Quarter,
but I could be wrong about that.
Yeah.
I'll look it up.
Concerted Defense. 1 blue instant counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 1 plus an additional 1 for each creature in your party. So with Snapcaster Mage, this is Spell Pierce. with the next creature that you play, a rogue, maybe it's better. I think it's just worse than Spell Pierce, though.
I agree. I think it's cool, but it is worse. Ghost Quarter is any land, and Field is non-basic.
Okay. Deliberate. 1 in a blue instant. Scry 2, then draw a card. Preordained is in Modern. As an instant. Cost 2 mana. I think this card's really dope. Yeah, I really like this card a lot. Like, people were playing Anticipate. This is just better than Anticipate in every way I can imagine. I guess
except that it only digs. This card only digs 1, or it's scry 2, draw 1.
Yeah, it's
digs 2.
It's Preordain as an instant 2, 1 blue, 1 colorless instant. Scry 2, then draw a card.
Okay, so with Anticipate, you see 3 cards, you get 1 in your hand, right? So the only difference with this card is obviously you see 2, and then if you're like, these are so bad, the 3rd card has to be better. I'll take that card.
Yes.
Versus. And if you're wrong and it's just the same thing or somehow worse, then you've made a mistake. But I think the upside of this card does make it significantly better than anticipated.
Because the better side is like, oh, the 2 of these cards are good. I just want this one first and I want it now. And I'll get the one next turn. Or like one of these cards is good. One of them is bad. And I think I like this more than Anticipate. It's sweet.
Does this card make Delver more playable in Modern, do you think?
Maybe.
Or do you think it's too weak?
The fact that it's an instant is really powerful, right? Because now on turn 2, you can hold off for man or mana leak or deprive or whatever. And then if they don't do anything or they don't do anything relevant, you can flash this in, scry, draw a card, reveal the top card. Or you can turn 1 Delver, turn 2, play something, and then during your upkeep, do this before you draw a card to then set the card of your top of your library to work with. Like, it has that brainstorm effect that does well with Delver. So I do actually think this does make Delver better.
Except the Delver's just not good enough anymore. A
That's a different
3/2
issue.
flyer for 1. Yeah, I think it is still good enough. I think the idea that if you had nice support for it in Modern, it could be good enough is still correct. Because a 3-power flyer for 1 is still good. Just realistically, the most ideal version is the one you're talking about where you hold up and counterspell, and that means you're not actually flipping your Delver really guaranteed until turn 3, which makes it a lot worse. Because by turn 3, I could have a Terramander or a Gurmag Angler or a Jace's Phantasm for that matter. It's the fact that Delver getting in on turn 2 in like legacy decks is like kind of the key.
Right.
Like that Brainstorm, the Brainstorm on upkeep, hold open, counterspell, type of thing to flip your Delver is very powerful. So anyway, I think I agree with you. It's worse than Spell Pierce though. The confounding whatever.
Concerted Defense. Oh, that was like a card ago. We're on Deliberate now. You deliberated for a very long time.
Oh, yeah.
Entire deliberate review before you reviewed that card. Inscription of Insight. 3 blue sorcery. Kicker. 2 blue. Choose 1 if the spell is kicked. Choose any number instead. Return up to 2 target creatures to their owner's hand. Scry 2, then draw 2 cards. Or target player creates a XX blue illusion creature token where X is the number of cards in their hand. This card's sweet. It does a lot of things. None of them are counter a spell. Returning 2 creatures to their owner's hand for 4 mana is actually, I think, pretty strong. And the fact that you can also then scry 2, like I think all of these things are things I would play for 4 mana. Like I would play each of these things, and getting it as a choice is pretty good.
Yeah, I think this is a limited powerhouse. It's probably not a constructed powerful card in any format, but maybe. Possible this card is better than we think, and it'll end up showing up as a control card, like a finisher in control decks. That like you just like play it when you draw it often, as in like the sort of the Shark Typhoon model, and like once you draw it and you play it, you're like, yeah, I'll just like play this and make a 4/4 flyer for 4, or like a 5/5 flyer for 4, and now I have lots of counterspells and I win. Or I'll draw this late in the game when I have 10 lands and a counterspell up, and I'll play it for 8, and it'll be like just a monster. It'll make me like, a huge creature, clear your board, and draw me cards, and scry. Like, it's a kind of a haymaker. It is possible. Probably in standard, this will see like 1 or 2 of play in control decks.
Yeah. As long as like Omnath isn't running around, I think this has a chance to see play. Like, it just is like no version of this card as a 4-drop. I would be sad to play as a 1 of or 2 of in a control deck, right? Like, oh, I drew, scry 2, draw 2 is like very good. It's almost draw 3 for 4 mana, if not almost draw 4 at times.
Right.
Bouncing 2 creatures to those in their hands is very efficient. and like making a creature is like the default on this, making a 4/4 for 4 in blue. And then the 8 mana version of this is insane. You're like draw 2 cards, make a threat, and bounce 2 things is like a lot of things that this does. Maddening Cacophony, 1 in a blue, kicker 4. So 6 total, 3 in a blue for the kicker. Each opponent mills 8 cards. If this spell is kicked, instead, each opponent mills half their library rounded up.
I always love that text. Half their library rounded up is always one of my favorites.
In Historic, this is a 2-card kill with the Jumpstart blue legendary for 3. It's every time if you were to mill an opponent, double it.
Okay,
as a legendary creature.
If it's kicked, though.
Yeah, if you kick as a 6 drop. So if you play him on 3 and you play this at 6, you just win the game. You just mill them out, no matter how many cards in the library. What's interesting about this card is like early game you play in mill decks is early game you play it for 2, mid game you play it for 6, but then late game you go back to paying it for 2 because eventually you get to the point where the like mill won't kill them if they have. For instance, basically less than 10 cards in their library, you get more mill out of 1 blue than you actually, I guess, anything less than 15 cards in their library. The non-kicker version of this is better than the kicker version, which I think is really interesting. And like I've had it in limited, and it's been really fascinating when it's like flipped back. I was like, oh, how do I kill them? I like can't get them to half their cards. And I was like, oh wait, if I just cast this as a 2-drop, I win.
I think there's probably a blue-black mill deck that exists in Modern now with 4 archive traps, 4 of these, 4 glimpses, and 4 breaking entering. Because now you have 12 cards in your deck that mill at least 8 for 2. And with Drown in the Lock, it's good.
It's already doing well. There's already a deck that's been put up like 5-0s. That's like a mill strategy that's playing like these and the island that gets you cards from your graveyard as well, and that you can fetch Mystic Sanctuary. I think it's even playing crabs. Like I think it's playing like both the 2 new crabs to some extent. So like, it might even be an 8 crab deck. I've seen 8 crab lists at least. I don't know if that's the one that top 8'd or 5-0'd or a daily. But yeah, this has brought mill to a legitimate position within Modern. So that's really sweet. I agree. This card's dope. Is Seagate Stormcaller, 1 in a blue, 2/1. When this enters the battlefield, copy the next instant or sorcery spell with converted mana cost 2 or less. You can cast this 2 or less you cast this turn. When you cast it, if Seagate Stormcaller was kicked, copy that spell twice instead. You may choose new targets for the copies, 4 in a blue to kick it. I mean, 90% of the time, you're just like, this into Lightning Bolt is like an insane play. This into
reverse. It's just reverse Snapcaster Mage, right? Yeah. Like, have you seen the Historic deck yet? That's this with the Dual Caster Mage Neoform thing.
No,
have you seen this yet?
No. That's sweet.
It's a turn. I lost. It's like a turn 3 or turn 4 kill. Mm-hmm. Turn 4 probably, but it's like 4 Dual Caster Mages with like 4 clones with like Neoform and this card. And you're able to basically, with like a mana creature, like I don't remember how it works, chain it all together. And like the last one you get is like some creature that comes in and gives everything haste and, then attack for like 18 or whatever.
I
was like,
awesome.
Wow, that's super sweet.
Yeah.
This card was like how it worked.
This card's the real deal. I think this might be one of the better cards in the set. The fact that it can just, like go into Lightning Bolt, go into in Legacy, Brainstorm or Ponder, or in Modern, go into Preordain or Serum Visions, and like that's all just like base level stuff, and then like it obviously has stuff like Ben described, which is like the more insane version. I'm excited by it.
Well, because Neoform is +1 on a creature, correct?
Yes. Eldritch Evolution
so
is +2.
That's so like basically it's I think the way it works is mana creature turn 1, right? Turn 2 something, turn 3 play land, play this creature, play Neoform. And how does that work? And so then, because it's copied, right? Or no, it's not copied. How did it work? I wish I could remember, because I was like, wow, that was like super sick. I should have paid closer attention. But there's like an iteration of this that totally worked, and I was like, wow, that was bonkers. So sweet. Anyway, it's sweet.
Thieving Skydiver, 1 in a blue, Merfolk Rogue, Kicker X, 2 in a 1, flying. When Thieving Skydiver enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, gain control of target artifact with converted mana cost X or less. If that artifact is an equipment, attach it to Thieving Skydiver. This is, I think, on a lot of people's list of the best commander card in the entire set. The fact that you can get, like, the default version of this is 3 mana steal someone's Soul Ring, right?
Yep.
Like at a base level, and then not to mention 2 mana get someone's mana crypt, or like all of the top end versions. Like if you have any amount of mana, the dope artifacts you're going to be able to steal with this. I think in cool metagames where artifacts are playable, this is also just a consideration. Now they have to be artifacts that are good enough on their own, so I think it's a little bit weaker. Now we don't know what the rest of this year is going to be. It feels like Kaldheim's going to be like artifact flip card themed to me, or like cool equipment themed. So I'm excited by that, and maybe that'll be cool with this. But yeah, we'll see. But it's sweet. I really like it.
It's definitely this and the last card. The two mana 2/1s are my favorite 2 cards in the set. They're like definitely right on my. This card especially. I mean, come on, this is a Merfolk Rogue that's a 2/1 for 2, which is already like I'm into that in like all formats basically. But then the fact that it's a Merfolk Rogue, it's a Merfolk Rogue that's like a 2/1 for 2 that then like doesn't fly, right? I'm making that up.
It does fly.
It does. It's a 2/1 flying Merfolk Rogue for 2 that also can like steal your artifact land, or like also just like steal. Like there's so many things this card does that I'm into. I want to build a deck around this card immediately. The problem is historic; it just won't have the targets that I want. This is a Highlander card for sure.
Right.
This goes into my Merfolk deck in a second. I'm like so excited to play this.
I think this I think you play this in Modern Merfolk in the sideboard even, right? Like against an artifact deck, you're just like, oh, I have this. I like have a removal spell for your thing, and I have a 2/1 flyer for 2, right? Like I think totally worth it. I don't know why you wouldn't do that. And plus, against some decks, you'll just like get them where like they need an artifact to be able to function, and you can kill it, or like you get just like bringing this against a Stoneblade deck. Not that Stoneblade's playable right now, but like you get to like play with like, oh, here, let me grab that Batter Skull or Feast and Famine or whatever. Like stealing a Batter Skull with this card.
Any kind of like affinity hardened scales type of strategy, it's very good against because like they have 0 mana artifacts. So on turn 2, like taking their Ornithopter slows that what they're doing down considerably. And it's like a hardened scale is one where they can sack it in response. Fine, make them sack it in response. Take an X creature. Take their, you know, what one of their X creatures that has counters on it, that has a casting cost of 0, right?
Yeah, it's really sweet. Blood Chief's Thirst. Kicker, 2 and a black, cost 1 black normally. Destroy target creature or planeswalker, converted mana cost 2 or less. If the spell was kicked, destroy that target creature or planeswalker instead. Do you play this in Historic?
Yeah, for sure. Historic. It's not as good as Fatal Push, but if you don't have Fatal Push, I think this is a strong card. I think this card is totally.
I don't think
it's a little metagame dependent, I guess. You don't think it's worse than Push?
Oh, it's definitely worse than Push. I think it's just like being a sorcery makes it worse. I'd rather be able to fetch and get a 4-drop, but nothing bigger than that with Push than this is 4 mana kill a thing, I guess. Can kill a planeswalker, obviously. Coveted Prize, 4 and a black. Sorcery, this spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature in your party. Search your library for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. If you have a full party, you may cast a spell with converted mana cost 4 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost.
There's definitely like stuff to this card that's cool. I mean, when I thought this card could be cast with a Mutavault, I was like more about it. But the fact that like you actually need to have a full party is fine. I mean, I think the fact that this is going to be in some situations Demonic Tutor or slightly worse Demonic Tutor, or like, you know, Aristic Tutor, whatever. I think is pretty good actually. Like, and in the upside situation where like you do get actually 1 mana Demonic Tutor and a spell for free, that's pretty bananas.
There's enough. So, this good card is accidentally a wizard or a rogue or a cleric or a warrior, obviously wizard, right? AKA Snapcaster Mage, that like I can imagine a world where you just get the cast this for 3 mana every time, and that's fine, and that's good enough. And then you just like make sure you play with Mutavault, or you play with another card that just accidentally like you like maybe prioritize a card that slightly would have been worse than this other card, but because it has this creature type, and then you once in a while get to do the 1 mana version of this, and then it's just like bonkers. I think that's pretty sweet. I'm into that.
Yeah, I think it's totally good. I don't think it's modern good, but I definitely think it's like going to be historic and pioneer and standard good for sure. Standard good. I mean, there's going to be a combo deck in standard with this card for sure. I feel like by the time it rotates, someone will have used this, getting a 4-drop and casting it for free 1,000%.
There are a ton of decks that this is better than Grim Tutor, right?
Yeah,
like, and that's the
sure.
that's the like level it needs to be at, and like even like. I'm just like trying to think, is there like, because there's wizards, right? Like Electromancer, Goblin Electromancer is a wizard. So like, are there Stormy-esque creatures that are clerics that exist or rogues that exist that lets you play this in like a stormed combo deck? Or like even in like,
well, I guess, so I love the idea of the cost reducers, right? So like, that's really cool that Electromancer reduces the cost of this card, but then also is a wizard. That's dope, actually. Wait, that's like really dope. Doesn't that just mean that you play Electromancer on turn 2 and this just on turn 3? You just cast this on turn 3?
Yeah. This is a 3-drop with Electromancer in play.
That's like just really cool on its own. I'm like all about that. That's kind of where you were going.
Yeah. Well, and plus like any other one, it's now it's Demonic Tutor, right? Like if you have a cleric or whatever. It doesn't. The sad thing is Electromancer. It's not if this costs only 1 mana, get a thing for free. You have to have a full party, but you still playing this for 2 mana is still really good. Going down the list, looking at some cards. I had the next card ready, and then okay, cool. Inscription of Ruin, 2 and a black, kicker, 2 black. Choose one. If this spell was kicked, choose any number instead. It's like it's a cycle, except it's an uncompleted cycle. There's only 3. Target opponent discards 2 cards. Return target creature card with converted mana cost 2 or less from the graveyard to the battlefield. Destroy target creature with converted mana cost 3 or less. This is already seeing a ton of play. It's like such a good versatile removal spell. Just the last ability by itself is like why it's worth a consideration. And the fact that then when that's not good, you can make your opponent discard 2 cards and or return a creature card from your graveyard. Also, cards that can like modally make your opponent discard 2 cards but do other things, I think are more powerful than sometimes they get credit for, because making your opponent discard their last 2 cards can often be game backbreaking.
Yeah.
And like the problem is like it has to line up to that moment, and it rarely do good discard cards do that. But when they do, they're a blowout. And this allows you to like use it for other things if you need to. But when you have the opportunity to just get them, you get them, and they are sad.
And they have made so many cards that get Mirror Superior back from the graveyard for like so easy the last few years. It's crazy. I feel like I just need more copies of Superior. They just need to give me 4 more functional reprints of that card, and I can build the deck I really want to build.
Mind Carver, I think we can skip. Nighthawk Scavenger. Tomahawk is the best one I think I've heard. 1 black, creature, vampire, rogue, flying, death touch, lifelink, Nighthawk Scavenger's power is equal to 1 plus the number of card types among cards in your opponent's graveyards. 1 plus */3. So this is Tarmogoyf's almost exact wording for its power toughness on just its attack, attached to a vampire Nighthawk. One of, I think, my favorite limited cards ever printed. This card's so sweet. I had this in limited. It's nuts. It's also just really good. I don't think it's constructed playable in standard, especially with stuff like Omnath running around, but I wish it was, because it's dope. Will you be playing this in your rogues lists?
Maybe. I mean, it having death touch makes it like real good. That's like that's the thing that's the best about it. I think that it has a lot of other things it does that are cool, but the fact that worst case scenario, it's just a flying blocker that kills whatever it blocks is really good. It's in the same way that like Baleful Strix is like nothing it's doing is that good, but the fact that it has death touch is what makes it so good.
Well, I think like Lifelink
it's
super
cool.
relevant.
Yeah, I think that there's a world that you're playing where this card being I don't think this is going to be that good in Commander, unfortunately. But I think in 1v1 in a Rogues deck, I mean, this card's pretty good. If you're incidentally milling your opponent out, and it's going to be like a 3-mana 5/3 probably flying death touch lifelink, it puts them on a pretty fast clock. It is good, and the life gain keeps you out of range of burn decks. It blocks their giant haymaker if you need it to. I think it's probably actually pretty good. This card's maybe a little better than you think.
Yeah, like almost 99% of decks, it's going to be a sorcery land instant creature 3, right? And then most of the time, your opponents are playing with a planeswalker or an artifact or an enchantment. And so, like, most of the time, this is going to be a 5/3, I feel like. And a 5/3 flyer for 3, lifelink Death Touch is, like, kind of an insane card. And when it's like when you're not getting stuff in their graveyard, it's still a 1/3 Death Touch. So it's like still really hard for them to get through, and it's gaining you life. Like, I think it's powerful. Next card is Null Priest of Oblivion, 1 and a black, 2/1. Kicker, 3 and a black, menace, lifelink. When it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. This is one of those cards that we were talking about earlier, where like the kicker like hurts me because I never want to cast this card emotionally. Without kicking it. This card's weird though, because it's really good when you don't kick it. A 2-mana 2/1 evasion lifelinker is like kind of a very above rate card. Plus, late game you draw it and it has reanimate attached to the back end. I like think this card's really cool and really good. And is like just on the edge of like painful about the kicker because you don't really want to cast it as a 2-drop. But I think you should just roll this out as a 2-drop. 2/1 menace lifelink is like very powerful.
Yeah, I mean, a 2/1 menace lifelink. Anytime you have a creature with evasion that costs 2 mana, I'm already listening. If you have an evasive creature for 2 mana that has an ability, I'm usually all in. It's rare that like I think one of them is really cool and ends up not being good. Like,
and the fact that like Reanimator is such a powerful effect. Like, I will play 6 mana to reanimate a thing a lot of the time and be very happy about it, especially when it comes with a free 2/1 with menace and lifelink. So like, yeah, I think this card's really sweet. I'm gonna be playing it for a long time. Speaking of kicker 2-drops, Scourge of Skyclaves, big knee boy throne himself, 1 and a black, demon, star, kicker 4 and a black. When you cast a spell, if it was kicked, each player loses half of their life rounded up. Scourge of Skyclaves' power and toughness are each equal to 20 minus the highest life total among players. When this card was previewed, I had a lot of fun posting a lot of like, is this Death Shadow memes? Basically what I'm saying. Hello, Death Shadow 2.0. There's some.
What do you think? Do you think it's as good?
I think that for formats like Historic where Death Shadow just doesn't exist, right? Like the arena ecosystem, it's cool that there's an ability to maybe have that type of card. I think that this is not as good as Death Shadow. If Death Shadow was looking for another Death Shadow, I don't think this is better than Gurmag Angler, right? Like, that's the real question.
Agreed.
But this card works with cards in a weird way, because if you have more than a specific life total, it's like a net negative to cards that count power and toughness when you do something. So, for instance, with Nethroi, if you have in this graveyard, it counts as so Nethroi is the black, white, green legendary mutate creature from Ikoria. That when you mutate it, you may bring in 10 total power from your graveyard and put it into play, I believe is the text. And so this counts against that 10. So if you have this in play, you could bring extra stuff into play that you wouldn't be able to before, because if this is a -5, then you can bring in 25 worth of power from your graveyard. So it does cool stuff like that, which is sweet. So I like that. And I think it's a cool card. I like that it exists. And yeah, in stuff like Historic in the modern world, the Historic world, the arena world, this is a sweet card to exist, because there's a bunch, like, I'd love to play Death Shadow in Historic, and can I make that work here?
Yeah, I think the other thing too about this card that is interesting is the kicker ability, which seems kind of relevant. Seems sort of irrelevant because it costs 5, and especially in like modern, losing half your life rounded up when it doesn't matter to you at all. The fact that this has like a stapled on thing that's like, I'll play this thing, and you'll go from 9 to 4. Now you lose because I'm going to attack you to lethal, or you got, if they're like 16 or something, like it's, it's a good burn spell, especially because your life total doesn't matter to you. So I do think that the kicker is interesting. It is an expensive kicker though at 5.
Yeah, I think this card is actually most relevant in Commander. I think this is like, and the Nethroi Commander decks are like obviously the very first place this is going to see play, and every person who's playing that deck should just auto include this, because it's your life total is at 40, so its starting power and toughness is 40. I mean, the other thing with this deck that's better than Death Shadows in some ways is like if you're at 15, this is a 5/5 for 2. Right? Death Shadow doesn't start becoming big until you're under 13. So that is another pretty relevant thing, right? So it's better in that way. It's just not a 1-drop. Yeah, I think this card is going to be really interesting overall. I think it's like very powerful in different ways, and so seeing what it does is going to be fascinating. Skyclave Shade, 1 and a black. Creature Shade, 3/1. Kicker, 2 and a black. Skyclave Shade can't block. If it was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 2+1/+1 counters on it. And then landfall, when it enters the battlefield under your control, if Skyclave Shade is in your graveyard and it's your turn, you may cast it from your graveyard this turn. So, obviously, the most comparable card to this card is Bloodghast. This isn't Bloodghast, but it's not the same as Bloodghast. It's a different card to me. Like, I think this card is very good. I've even had it now and limited a few times and have tried playing it in decks. And like, I think its power level is actually higher than people give it credit to, because on paper, it's worse than Bloodghast, but it's bigger than Bloodghast. This comes in as a 5/3 late game. So like Bloodghast's job was always filling up your board with a bad creature, but you're getting a bunch of stuff for free into play. And you take advantage of that in a different way. The job of this is to have just a recursive threat that you can keep playing, that no matter how many removal spells they play, it's going to come back as a 5/3, which is a much bigger thing than a 2/1. Obviously, but like the way you interact with it on the board, like this kills you in 4 turns. A Bloodghast you could ignore forever. And it's a cast trigger. So Vengevine comes back. Bloodghast doesn't bring Vengevine back. I can cast this from my graveyard and Vengevine's trigger and come into play.
That's sweet. It also invalidates all of the feel bads of kicker cards that we were talking about. It's one of the only ones I can think of where the design is quite literally made to make us both happy, where you're playing a 2-mana 3/1, which I'm totally happy to do. Like, it's good enough. It's not great, but now it's dead and it's in my graveyard. And later in the game, I can recast this not as a 2-mana 3/1, but as a 2-mana as a 5-mana 5/3, which like I'm so much happier about than the initial version. This like solves the problems basically, and I think that makes this card especially appealing.
The next card is Soul Shatter. 2 and a black instant. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker with the highest converted mana costs among creatures and planeswalkers they control. This card's powerful. It's an instant speed. It's going to get rid of the best thing that they have every single time, which is really, really, really strong. Also, the artist, Wiley Beckett, great first name. Also, I think is one of my new favorite artists. Like, I think they've done a few different pieces, including Thwart the Grave from this set, and it's gorgeous. I like really, really, really love it. Thoughts?
Yeah. So this card, I had looked at this card. This card is good. I'm playing this, I think, in one of my decks already. Maybe it's in a Highlander deck, or maybe it's Arena Gauntlet or something like that. But yeah, I mean, it's instant speed. Like, it's totally playable. it's doing exactly what you want that card to do.
Right. It's an instant speed effect. That's
I
going
feel
to
like
get.
It's a card that almost exists already.
The Mardu spell from Khans was the skull, not crackling something.
Yeah. Crackling Doom, right?
Yes, Crackling Doom was similar, if not exactly this. I think they lost life also. There's only so many cards. So the card was, where's it at? Yeah, so Crackling Doom. Crackling Doom does 2 damage to each opponent. Each player sacrifices a creature with greatest power among creatures that player controls. So instead of doing 2 damage, they have to sacrifice a creature or a planeswalker. So this has the ability to get rid of the best planeswalker if there's like an Ugin in play, right? Which like is super relevant. I think this card's modern playable. I think this card's like legit. I think this card's ability to get rid of stuff like Ugin or Karn against Tron, or just like the best creature decks have, is really strong.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much more focus now this last like couple of years on answers to planeswalkers. There has to be, because obviously War of the Spark happened, and so many more of these cards now have that reference. That actually makes me think that the initial wow, planeswalkers have dominated and taken over and are so good feeling we had within a year or two from now will be totally balanced out, because like there are so many Angrath Rampages and cards like this that are printed that are just incidentally going to be able to answer planeswalkers in the same way that we had so many ways to answer creatures. The Elder Spell is not going to be like special anymore. It's just going to be like an interesting take on something that is super common.
Yeah, I agree. I really like this card. I think it's like always going to be amazing to cast. And that's what you want from a removal spell. Thwart the Grave, 4 black. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature in your party. Return target creature card and up to 1 target cleric, rogue, warrior, or wizard creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. This was I mentioned at the beginning. I think this card's actually one of the better party cards in Magic overall. Just because it's a reanimation spell for 2 cards. So you're reanimating 2 cards, and it can cost 4 mana when, like, I'm already willing to pay 5 mana for 1 creature card in most non-eternal formats. And so the fact that this can get down to 4 mana or 3 mana relatively easily, not relatively easily, but with a little bit of effort. And then that same effort you have to put to make that happen allows this to get you 2 cards from your graveyard. And one of them doesn't have to be a party member. So I can get like Grizzlebrand and is Neonate maybe? Maybe Neonate is a rogue? I'm hoping. Might be an aristocrat.
I'm not sure, but I think that there are going to be very interesting decks. I would have to look it up to see if I'm correct in this. But isn't Pilferer is 100% a rogue, the Ghostly Pilferer.
Mm-hmm.
That allows you to discard a card. Mm-hmm. So it's a rogue and it allows you to discard a card, right? So that's one thing. And then the other one I was going to say was Una's Prowler, I think, is also a fairy rogue. And it's so there's something to be said for the idea that you are like a rogue's kill you with creatures deck that also it has the reanimator backup plan of your best value card. Also just being able to be like, yeah, so what I'm going to do here at the end of my turn 5 is that I've attacked and you've answered my creature and now you're at 11. And for 3 mana, I'm going to get back that creature you just killed and also this Gristlebrand or like this enormously powerful thing. This card actually, I think we're almost underselling. I think this card has all the things we were just talking about when it comes to like the front side of a strategy and the back side. The upside of this card is enormous. Like, the upside of this card is and it's built into a strategy already. Those rogues cards we just talked about build the deck for you. Like, I want to go build that deck right now.
Well, and like even on the other hand, like Nyambi, the esteemed speaker, which Marshall hopefully is just going to put that art on my phone and then leave it there. I summoned it with my phone. Is like a cleric that has a discard ability. Discard a legendary card, draw 2 cards. Some of the best stuff to reanimate are legendary cards generally nowadays. So you can like discard stuff with her. She's a cleric. She also has a front end that's powerful. You have Ghostly Pilferer, which is a rogue. There's definitely wizards that are powerful enough that are really good with these. There's the bounce wizard. What's his face? Baron, not Baron, right? Baron?
Which one? The new
blue,
one?
Blue.
Baron, the one that returns one of your own to your hand?
No, he returns a.
Yeah.
He bounces. He
it bounces another creature, but at the end of turn, if you bounce one of your own permanents, you draw an additional card.
Correct.
Baron, right? So 2/2 for 3.
Yeah, playing Baron with Nyambi and Ghostly Pilferer with this is like a reanimator strategy / like return stuff to your hand strategy / bounce your opponent stuff strategy. Like all those cards work really well together, and that's a wizard, rogue, and cleric all in one, right? So like.
Oh my God. I just had the update to my rogues deck that just like came to mind because I was already playing 4 Fairy Miscreant in that deck, which is a rogue in itself that is additional value with Baron returning it to your hand. So now I get to return it to my hand and replay it, but I've also drawn an additional card off the Baron. And then with Blackguard, now my ability to like do that and replay my creatures to then get the counters on them. This all sounds really sweet. This all sounds like super fun.
Yeah, I think like there's like sweet stuff to do with this card, and this is like a real payoff for it that's worth it. And is good without party, right? That's always the thing with these party effects is can't if I top deck this on turn 6, how good is it? It's pretty great. Reanimate 2 creatures, put them into play. One of them is Baron. It bounces your opponent's creature to their hand, and you get another dope thing. Like I'm all in. And that is the black card. So We're now at like an hour and a half this video. Now I think there's like 10 minutes that were a hot take, and there were 10 minutes that were talking about sandwiches, but we're at 2 hours in the recording. So that's how I got to an hour and a half. Not sandwiches, fast food places. So I think the plan is, listeners, that we're going to do the red cards, the green cards, and the gold cards either next week, depending on how long it takes, maybe as the episode, hopefully more in line with the hot take that we maybe do next week. We'll figure out what the timing of everything is going to be. But thank you so much for listening. So there's one more episode of these. We hope you guys are enjoying these. Please let us know in the comments if you like the reviews that we did this time, the way we did it, where we focused on mechanics and kind of just like went over different cards. Because we've opened up so many different formats, it does mean we have to look at more cards versus just like prioritizing modern. Hopefully you guys are enjoying that. And if you're not enjoying it, please let us know as well, because we can go back to just doing top 10s where we like rank the best 10 cards, and instead we miss a bunch of them, but then we only do one episode, and so we'd love your feedback on which version of these reviews you like, and make sure to watch next week's episode. You know, one of the reasons we're trying to figure out different ways is the reviews. Sometimes we do really well with them, sometimes the review episodes aren't the best, so we're excited to see what your guys' thoughts are. And beyond that, make sure to follow and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and then make sure to find us on the internet at Kess Wiley.
I'm at Ben Bateman Media.
And thank you, Marshall, so much for editing all these videos. Sorry for this week. It's a little chaotic because of the delay in audio. And we'll talk to you guys on Monday when we do the live stream, when we're brewing decks. Send me your crab tech. Ben, sneak peek, what deck you're playing.
I'm playing that new blue-black rogue, the 4-drop guy. I can't think his name, but he's real sweet. He's like
the Commander Precon one or the Merfolk, the like in the set one.
I think the Commander Precon one.
So you're playing Anawan the Ruin Thief, 2 blue-black vampire rogue. Other rogues you control get +1/+1. Whenever one or more rogues you control deals combat damage to a player, that player mills a card for each 1 damage dealt to them. If that player mills at least 1 creature card, that way you draw a card, and it's a 2/4. Oh, that reads like way much more up your alley. Yes, that is the card I'm playing. Sick. I'm hyped.
Yeah.
I'm excited for how this works. Yeah. You ready to lose? You're gonna take big cracks.
This card should draw me lots of cards. It's a lord. It's a vampire. There's lots of sweet synergy. I am very much looking forward to this card. I think this deck will be fun. So I'll spend all weekend building it and hopefully be ready in time on Monday, like instead of normally when I'm sleeving up my proxy deck last minute.
You have one job. You have one job. All right. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll talk to you guys next Monday during that stream. I hope you guys have a good time.
This has been a production of Time Traveler Media, sending podcasts into the future.